The Yankees better turn things around ASAP, or they could be sitting at third place in the AL East by the All-Star game. He writes, we read. Greg Joyce joins us from Toronto ahead of tonight's game to talk Yankees baseball. Greg, thanks for hopping on with us, man. Though a big game tonight, especially after what went down on Tuesday night. But I want to get straight to this because my social media timeline and feeds are all blown up by some angry fans that have turned on Brian Cashman and Aaron Boone during this recent slump. I'm going to read off some of the gripes, but I need you to be the voice of reason. And I'll start with the miscues on defense and how they're leaving runners in scoring position. It's something that we're seeing night in and night out during this recent run of bad baseball. So is whatever that's wrong with the Yankees right now fixable internally?
Yeah, I think it certainly should be. Because it's the same guys who were here the first 2 months that had got off to such a good start, and then really over this past month, it's just been a lot of guys kind of regressing to the mean, maybe, and some uglier issues kind of popping up, like the defense, some base running stuff. The hitting with runners in scoring position is always a frustrating one when teams seem to go through it at some point every year, and right now it's happening at a bad time. They're kind of leading to this losing 12 out of 18 stretch. I think it's their 30 for their 181 with runners in scoring position in their last 19 games, so batting 166 in those spots. So is a kind of thing that you talk about hitting being contagious. It almost seems like it's the reverse can be true too. When they have these spots, they're getting guys on. It was 2 for 17 last night. They're getting plenty of guys on. It's just they're not able to get that big hit, not able to cash in. So, I mean, you spent a lot of the first 2 months talking about the depth of their lineup and a lot of the guys that had gotten off to really good starts. And a number of those guys have cooled off over the past month, but certainly, they have the guys on that, in that clubhouse and that roster to be able to turn it around. Obviously, the trade deadline's coming up at the end of this month, and that'll help too, to try to get some reinforcements in here, particularly in the bullpen, which has been, kind of beat up of late. A lot of guys shouldering some heavy workloads, and then losing Fernando Cruz to the IL again for this one. It seems like it didn't be a good chunk of time, but yeah, I mean, it's been a rough stretch. Certainly, they have the guys in there to be able to turn around, but it's every time you think they start to get some momentum, together, that kind of take another step back. So we'll see, when they're able to kind of stop the bleeding here.
Yeah, I'm hoping they stop the bleeding soon because, again, there's a lot of finger pointing going on my social media timeline from Yankees fans. And I know I've asked you this question before, but this is a guy that really hasn't gotten better since then, and the fans continue to point it out. But is there anything that can be done in-house or maybe via trade to upgrade the shortstop position? Fans have just about had it with Anthony Volpe up at this point.
Yeah, I don't see that happening. I think they're going to, never say never on anything, but I think they're going to keep running him out there. They think he's a pretty productive shortstop. Obviously it's been a rough stretch, couple of weeks here at the plate where he's been pretty unproductive, and then the defense has kind of reared its head a little bit. He doesn't seem quite as sharp as the last few years, which obviously he was a Gold Glove winner his rookie year. Had another great year last year defensively, but he seems like he hasn't been quite that crisp this year. Leads the league in errors for shortstops. So I know that's it can be a frustrating combination. But yeah, everything the Yankees say that they still believe in this guy. They think he's he's still only 24 years old, which is true and fair. There are a lot of young, really good shortstops in the league. So, when he gets compared to that, it doesn't put him in the best light, I think. Aaron Boone said again yesterday, he feels like he's above average for, productive offensive wise for his position, which, over the last, given the last few weeks, the way he's hit isn't necessarily the case anymore. When you look at a lot of categories, OPS, stuff like that, he's kind of middle of the pack in terms of shortstops on the season. So he's kind of fallen back a little bit there, but it's been a rough go. But they still see a young player that development isn't always linear, isn't always guys don't kind of explode right away or reach their potential right away. And I think he's kind of going through some growing pains still in year 3 but I think he's a guy that they're going to keep running out there. They obviously have some bigger needs to address at the trade deadline, elsewhere in the infield and in the bullpen as well, maybe even in the rotation. So I think those are the more pressing needs, and I think Volpe's going to be out there pretty much every day unless he gets injured. So
One of those needs could be at third base because everyone knows that Jazz Chisholm Jr. is a lot better or elite at second base. So is it time for the Yankees to give up on the DJ LeMahieu experiment and look for a true third baseman at the trade deadline so they could get Jazz back in his natural position?
yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if Jazz is back at second base before long. We'll see if it happens as early tonight. I don't know about that, but Aaron Boone last night kind of left the door open for the first time, really, to flip flopping them back and having Jazz at second, where he's most comfortable and and at best defensively, and maybe you have LeMahieu back at third, where he's been okay at second. But he doesn't have the range that he probably once had. That's probably still going to be the case at third base, but if you put Jazz back at second, you kind of reconnect him with Anthony Volpe, that they'll play combo up the middle, have some better range. Jazz has been willing to play third base as he has, as he had last year after the trade, and then this past month since he came back from the IL. But you can just tell, watching game in and game out, that he doesn't have the full experience there. It's still not, all the way there defensively, fundamentally at third base. So you would think that at some point that they kind of end that experiment a little bit and move him back to second. Part of it was that DJ was most comfortable at second base, trying to get him back in a groove once he got back from the IL to see what he could give them, what he had left in his bat. He's been okay at the plate. He hits a lot of balls hard, hasn't necessarily gotten the results, but at this point, creeping toward the All-Star break and trade deadline, seems like it could be the time to kind of flip those guys back and also obviously see what they can get either third or second at the trade deadline. Kind of opens up either spot, but it certainly seems like Jazz more better defensively at second base.
All right, lastly, it looks like we've hit that part of the summer where Brian Cashman and Aaron Boone take a lot of heat. There are a lot of fans that are even on social media calling for their jobs. Is this typical fan outrage, or could one of their seats actually be heating up?
Yeah, I don't think so at this point. I think it would take more than this. Obviously, their lead atop the AL East has shrunk here. I think it was they got it up to at 7.5 games, I think, at its best. Now it's down to one. Could be, if the Blue Jays win tonight, they'd be tied with the Yankees for the division lead by the end of tonight. So we'll see what happens. But they always seem to go through a stretch like this during the season, and then come September, you look up and they're in a pretty good spot going to the playoffs. So they always preach kind of the full 162, as frustrating as these stretches can be and as bad as it can seem. They kind of, when you zoom out, take the big picture look. I think it would take a lot worse stretch than this to shake up anything there. But like you said, these are the same guys that before this stretch, they were first 2 months of the season, they were cruising pretty good. And I know nobody wants to hear it, but this is also a team that's playing without Garrett Cole for the season. Hasn't had Luis Gil pitch an inning yet. Probably not going to have him until August. So I think on the whole, it's been they've been all right. Obviously a frustrating stretch, but I don't see either of those guys in danger of anything happening yet.
I know it's kind of crazy for me to ask when they're still in first place in the AL East at this point, but the baseball Karens have been on full display on my timeline, Greg, so I had to ask you that. Thanks for clearing it up, man, and enjoy Toronto.
You got it. Thanks, Brandon.